why don't we go ahead and get started? It's my pleasure to introduce Noam Levin. I've been here quite some time with an affiliation in CES and also at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. Lots of great talks on data and conservation in the past, so I'll let you take it away.
Okay, thanks very much, Matt. So, when these fires started, I was in Israel, and so following the news, online, etc. And the fires kept on raging, as you know. And as they went on, I started downloading data, thinking about things. And actually, my first publication is about fires in Israel. And since then, I've done some other studies about fires in Israel and in Australia. So I thought to myself, why not also do something around these fires? Noting the magnitude and scale of this event. So I will now present this study. My co-authors are Marta Yebra, she's from ANU. She's a leading fire scientist in Australia, originally from Spain, and Stuart Finn, you know. So I will start my talk with some general background about fires in Australia, and then just two examples of studies related to fires, to these Black Summer fires, and then I'll go into our own study. So that's the plan. No, maybe another one.
It should be done.
What? Just click this. Let's see. Okay, now it's good. Okay, thanks very much. Okay, so to have a fire, we need four things. Okay, that's the four switches idea. We need vegetation. We need some biomass. We need some fuel to be burned. We need that the fuel is available for burning, meaning that it is dry enough to be easily ignited. We need appropriate fire weather. It doesn't have to be always very hot and dry. Sometimes it's enough to be very windy, and then fires can spread. And we also need to have some source of ignition, either anthropogenic or natural, which in Australia is very common as well, lightning strikes. But in other places in the world, there are no natural fires, all are human related. Regarding types of vegetation and fire, fire ecoregions, this is from a paper by Murphy, Fire Regimes of Australia. And you can see there's of different types of vegetation. And for the Black Summer fires, we are mostly, the media's attention, of course, was around Southeast Australia, with all these eucalypt forests burning. But Australia is a very fire-prone continent, as you all know, having many fires and many large fires compared with any other region in the world. But the fires in the southeast and in the savanna areas and in the woodlands are very different in the regimes. And the eucalypt forest, they are characterized by high intensity fires, but the intervals are very long. It can be 20, 50, 100 years or more. Whereas in the, let's say, savannas, fires are of low intensity usually, but much more frequent. So different types of vegetation and of fire regimes. That was the background. Two papers, I think, about the Black Summer fires. So this is termed the role of climate variability in Australian drought. And as you can see, they highlighted here that since 2016, if I remember, okay, there's been an exceptional period of prolonged drought in Australia. This is in the Murray-Darling Basin of Australia. And this is related to climatic oscillations, La Nina, the Indian Ocean dipole, etc. So that was the background. Okay, preparing the vegetation, drying it for what's about to come. I forgot to mention it, but there was some paper, maybe from 2000 or something. I forgot who wrote it, but it's quite famous. that once said, an Australian scientist, that by 2020 we should be able to see the impact of climate change on fires in Australia. I mean, that was just a lucky number, of course. And another paper, unprecedented burn area of Australian mega forest fires. And I just brought one figure from this paper just to highlight how exceptional these fires were. So what can we see here? We can see different forest biomes, okay, in each of the continents. So each color is a different forest biome. And usually the percent area of forest which is burned in a single year is about 2%, okay, roughly, of course, changing, okay? But that's more or less the average. And within these what's called the Black Summer fires, more than 20% of Australia's eucalypt forest burned. So this is unprecedented, not just for Australia, it's exceptional globally. So huge event. Okay, so what was our objective? I wanted to understand which factors led to some of the fires being larger in area, burn for longer periods, and be more destructive than others. So fires, it's a multifaceted event. We can look at different aspects of fires, okay, try to understand different things. So that was the big objective. And of course, we didn't cover everything. There will be papers published on this for years to come now. So that's our take on this. And this is just generally what we did, but I will now go into more details. So we analyzed the extent and the climatic, biological, and anthropogenic factors that can explain these forest and non-forest fires. Usually most of the papers on the Black Summer fires focus on these forest fires in South Australia. We also incorporated all fires that took place at the same period of time. And for this study, what is the period of time between September 2019 and mid-February 2020? Okay, so that's a time frame of this study. So first of all, and another thing, there are different ways to analyze fires. For example, in such a study, you can see that the event was studied as a whole. Okay, so how much of the forest burned? Okay, so we can try to understand why in a certain year there was more burnt area, okay, for example, than in other years. Other studies look at the grid cell level, trying to understand that each grid cell, okay, 1 kilometer, 30 meters, or whatever, why was a certain grid cell, why did it burn in a more severe degree than a different pixel? Okay, we looked at it in a different way. Okay, so for us, the observations were not the years or the grid cells, but fire events. Okay, I will now explain about this. Okay. Move too fast. Okay. So there's no, I can draw here. Okay. So let's say we have an ignition. Okay. So and then the fire starts spreading, and let's say the wind is like this. So we'll have maybe a fire which goes like this. Okay. So for us, each observation was a fire. Okay. That polygon. We needed to create these polygons, okay, because there is no such data set available. So how to go around this? And this is just an example of Kangaroo Island, okay? So we know for each grid cell when it was burned, okay, the date of burn. There are two NASA products. There's the VRS active fire data, which is very good, but if it was cloudy, then okay, there's no data. Okay? And then we completed that with the MODIS burnt area product, which is based on change detection, but the burn date is less accurate. So we combine these two NASA products to know for each grid cell the date when it burned. Okay, so here you can see the coloring is based on the burn date, calendar date, since January 1st, 2019. So there's more than 365. Okay, we passed another year. And then I ran a segmentation on the burn dates. And then you can see that all these pixels were roughly, had the same burn date, so they were segmented to one segment. Okay, playing with the threshold, we've got a segment. Now we need to combine the segments to belong to a specific event or fire event. This I did manually. That's visually going over everything, okay, and trying to understand which belongs to which. Okay, so half manually and half automatically. And here we can go out and we can see two files. Just an example, so you'll know what is the data that I will be studying. So we've got a fire that burned early on. You can see by the colors, okay, when it burned, but it was restricted to the northern part of the island, okay, and didn't go on. And then the more, the famous fire that we all heard about started. This seems like, fire starting by lightning. This pattern, okay. You also see this pattern in the desert and savanna areas of Australia. So you can see that this is a planet image, satellite image. So you can see where the fire started, okay, and then the wind, okay, how it blew that day. So this is this area, and then the fire slowly spread, okay, to burn almost all the native vegetation on Kangaroo Island, which is a big island. So we have here two fires, okay, on Kangaroo Island. So that's the way I created all the polygons of fires across Australia for this time frame. And okay, we always need the threshold. Okay, what is the minimum size of fire that we're going to analyze? Here I chose 100 square kilometers, which is already quite big. Okay, so that was the minimum size.
Segmented them all by hand?
No, the segmentation is automatic. That's a GIS thing. But to decide whether this and this is the same file, okay, this I did visually, yeah. But also with some doing some edge filtering to assist me in deciding. And also there are many difficult questions because, if we have two fires, one started here, one started here, in the end they meet maybe, but I need to decide, okay, where's the meeting place? Okay, so these will be two separate events, although in the end they look like one big fire scar. So it's not a simple thing, okay, to decide on. Okay, so what did we get? And this is just showing the fires of Southeast Australia. I will now soon show also all Australia. So here you can see some of these polygons, okay? The burn date for each polygon, and also ignition. So for each fire polygon, okay, based on the dates, okay, I found where was the first date. Okay. Also around this, there are many technical issues because you might have one outlier pixel, that burned, that is unrelated. So I also played with the percentiles to think, okay, what is the, which lower and upper values to remove to, okay, I used 90%. I found that worked well for me. So we have for each fire the polygon and the way it started, okay, which both I have used later. Altogether, 391 fires, okay, within this data set. And so these fires, which were larger than 100 square kilometers, burned most of the area. Okay, so of course there are small fires. You can see all these colors. Okay, too small, not included. Okay, only what's with the black outline. And here they are colored based on the forest and non-forest, because some of the statistics were run separately for the forest and non-forest fires. And also for the forest fires, some statistics were run separately just for the forest fires in Southeast Australia. My definition here was between Fraser and Kangaroo Island. Okay, so that was my definition. Some studies only focus on this area. Okay, so many studies. Okay, just an example of the exceptionality, there's such a word, of these fires. Okay, so this is based on the MODIS active fire product. You can see it for 3 biomes in Australia. And this is the temperate broadleaf and mixed forest. So you can see the number of monthly active fires detected. It's high, of course. And here's it's an anomaly wise. Whereas, so the anomaly for these eucalypt forests was very high, whereas for the same period of time, the savanna forest, it was a regular year. Okay, nothing special here. But still, I compared them in the same paper. Response variables. So which response variables did we use? Many. And remember, the observations are the polygons. Okay, so area, how big was the fire size? For how many days did it burn? Area divided by days is like average speed of fire. Okay, how fast is spread on average? These are all average per polygon, of course. Within each polygon, there's variability. Fire radiative power from the NASA products, and then some remotely sensed based indices of the impact of fire on vegetation. These are all available. Vegetation health index, that is globally available. And these 3 are Australian products, the live fuel moisture content, which is based on Marta Yebra's work, and the photosynthetic vegetation and synthetic and non-photosynthetic vegetation, okay, the dry vegetation. So here I'm looking at the difference, okay? The difference in, for example, photosynthetic vegetation between the start date of the fire and the end of the fire. Because all these are time series. Okay. I'll show you these time series as an example. Later on during the study, some papers came out mapping fire severity. There was not, these were not available initially. So I also incorporated these. Okay. One is only for New South Wales. One is for most of the fires in Australia, but not all. Okay. Such mapping was not done, as far as I know, previously in Australia, mapping burn severity consistently across the continent. Each state is doing different things. Okay, this is just to show, each point is one of the fires, just to show, just have a view of the response variables. So some general descriptive statistics of these response variables. So we've got the non-forest fires, all forest fires in Southeast Australia. So forest fires in Southeast Australia were burned much larger areas, okay, for more days, okay, had a higher fire radiative power, and had more impact on live fuel moisture content and on the photosynthetic vegetation, okay, on green vegetation, compared with the other fires. A correlation matrix between the response variables. And it's interesting, especially that there are, if everything was correlated, then there would be no need to study, each of these, because because all variables can be reduced to a single variable. But a fire which burned for many days may not have, high fire radiative power or whatever. So you can see that some variables are hardly related to the others, like the number of days a fire burned. Okay, it's hardly correlated. Whereas whereas others are more correlated, like change in photosynthetic vegetation. Okay, so some are more indicative of others, some not at all. There is a paper just coming out, which did a global analysis of 3 fire response variables for all fires in the world, in environmental research letters. Okay. So it's an interesting thing to look at different response variables, not just a single one. Okay, and just a few simple scatter plots just to start. Each point is a fire. Okay, the coloring You'll see this coloring all the way. Okay, the non-forest fires are in pink, the black forest fires, the black summer forest fires in green, and those in Southeast Australia in black. So you see that fires that burnt a large area, okay, burnt for many days, but the other way around is not, okay? And of course, if a fire burns for a few days, it cannot burn a large area. Okay. And we can quantify these relationships using quantitative regression, which is also something that we did here. And here's some weak correlation between fire radiative power and the area burned per day. Okay. Now, so what were the explanatory variables that we took? And relatively in Australia, you know, we have many data sets available. Okay, it's not always like that in different parts of the world. And also, it's easier to study Australian fires because they are very big. So satellites can capture them. Fires in Israel, for example, are very small in area and short in duration. So often satellites just don't capture them. Okay. So climatic variables. I won't go over all of them, just a few. For example, how much rain was there in the previous year? How much rain? Is it exceptional? Okay, so relative to other years, is the previous rain, is it high or low? How many days since the last significant rain? Okay, how like an indication of dryness. How many days since the fire started until a significant rain will come? Okay, because if significant rain is coming, it will help in extinguishing the fire. The fire danger index, Australian product. Lightning strikes. It's a fascinating data set that is available. It costs money, at least the one I used, but it gives you millions of points. Okay, when a lightning stroke anywhere in the world, it's not expensive. Vegetation variables. Okay, we need fuel. Tree cover. Okay, so distinguish between forest, non-forest. How much forest was there? Forest continuity. Let's say that a fire started here, but the forest area is very small. It can't spread very much. So looking how much forest is there around the ignition point? Okay, what is the potential? Well, for example, in Israel, fires don't last long because the forest is small. It can't burn so much. And changes. So the vegetation indices, how much vegetation was there in the beginning? Okay, these proxies of vegetation. How many fires were in the previous 8 years? Could have chosen a different time frame. How much? Let's say fire starts here, but all this area was already burned a month ago. It can't burn again. Okay, so also looking at that, how much area already burned previously around the ignition point? Okay. And anthropogenic variables, distance to roads, distance to electricity line, because sometimes, you know, fires are associated with electricity, you know, like in California. How many people live in the area? Also because often fires are started, you know, intentionally, unintentionally by people. As a proxy for land tenure, we used the percent of the burnt area of each fire that was within protected areas or Aboriginal land. And also use the land cover data set to derive the different interfaces, like the wildland urban interface, okay, where the cities meet with the forest. That's a big thing in fire research. Okay, just to show you some of the variables. So, and focusing on just some examples for a single fire. Okay, so that you have some intuition. Sydney, okay, is over here. So one of the largest fires ever. Notice the scale. Okay, so this is just a tree cover. Okay, forest cover, percent cover. population. As you can see, okay, an unpopulated area, these are all protected areas. Land cover, so we have the built, and we've got different types of vegetation, agriculture, etc. And from these, I calculated 3 different interfaces which are common in the literature: the wildland-urban interface, cities, and wild. Wilderness was mentioned, forest grassland, and forest agriculture. Okay, again, to test whether fires are related to distance of the interfaces from the ignition point. And just to follow this specific fire. Okay, so this fire started around here, okay, very remote area. You can see a rapid eye image taken, I guess, the day or 1 day after the fire started. Okay, so I guess the lightning struck here. Okay, I mean, there's nothing in, no people are going there. And this is 2 days later. You see, this is zoom in. Okay, Landsat false color, blue is green vegetation because it's all infrared. You can see the flames. Okay, where the flames are now spreading. End of October. So two weeks later, this is the fire scar already. In the visible, you don't see anything. Infrared, goes through smoke. Mid-December, it's still going on. Okay, it's already burnt most of the area. Again, a zoom in, and end of December, it's nearly the end of this fire. So it burned for 2 months on. I mean, there's nothing that can be done. Remote areas, so many fires at the same time. We can only protect special places, either where people live or where that rare tree was. I guess you saw those, that they had special firefighting forces parachuted to protect the specific gully, which is secret. Okay. And this is just the fire spread. Okay, so this way I knew I could identify where the fire started. Okay, based on such mapping, 5 minutes. Okay. And the burn severity mapping to burn severity mapping available. They're not the same. Okay. Some differences between them, but never mind. Okay. And this is just to show you some time series of these fires. So for each fire, we can see, when it started, how the burnt area accumulated, the impact on vegetation, etc. Okay, so I derived all my either response or explanatory variables from such time series. It's the forest fire, a non-forest fire, and the fire on Kangaroo Island. Okay. Many statistics. I will just focus on the interesting thing. Okay, these are just univariate variables. Okay, too much to see here. So let's look at this. So for each of the response variables, how many variables were statistically correlated with it? So for the forest fire in Southeast Australia, change in photosynthetic vegetation or in live fuel moisture content, okay, were best correlated with the explanatory variable. Okay, that's at a univariate level. Too sensitive. And vegetation variables were the most were more often statistically significant in explaining the response variables. Okay, so for the Southeast Australian forest fires, okay, in the non-forest fires, also climatic variables came in. Some simple figures. You can see, at least for the non-forest fires, how much rain was in the previous year was important variable because we've got more herbaceous vegetation which is able to burn. change. If live fuel moisture content was higher in the beginning of the fire, it's also quite intuitive. Okay, then you have more impact on the forest. Oh, that's nice. How many times the area was burnt in the previous 8 years? Okay, if an area was burnt many times, okay, it can't burn again a lot. Yeah, that's all intuitive, but things that we took in, that we brought in. Everything is transformed here. So, and then we ran some multivariate models, okay, including everything. Again, it's quite difficult to read these because we've got 8 response variables, and these are all the explanatory variables. Okay, so showing the standard coefficients in the regression model only if it's significant. So let's summarize them. So adjusted R-square values of these regression models. No, it's not too bad. In some of them, some of the variables, more than 60%, but some much less, okay, in our ability to explain them. What else to show? So vegetation variables were the most important in explaining. You see that more vegetation-related variables came in, entered the models than the anthropogenic or the climatic variables. And now, no, not moving. Oh, okay, so again, we found that vegetation variables were more important in explaining different response variables. That's one. Another thing is in Australia, prescribed burning and traditional indigenous burning are very important tools. Okay, and they have been shown useful in different studies. But in my view, given the scale of Australia, okay, and the sparsity population, you can't expect to do controlled burning and traditional burning everywhere. It's just impossible to do that. The wild and urban interface, that's a very important area. That's where we should concentrate our efforts, both to reduce, fire starting unintentionally and to better protect. That's a big challenge on its own, of course. And there's a need for a unified approach for monitoring fires in Australia, because different states, in Australia are doing their own thing. So I guess it's not something that I'm in charge of course, but something that I guess will be done. Will be good if Australia will have its own satellites for monitoring fires and not rely on other countries. And the data sets that were developed here, I've uploaded them to Pangea. It's a data publisher. So you can download. I mean, most of the original data sets are freely available, but the derived data sets like the polygons, etc., Excel sheets, you can take them from here. So that's it. So thank you very much.